Up-and-coming anime fans from the mid-2010s have almost always shared the same experience with anime in that era. From dealing with watching it on YouTube to discussing it in the most obscure websites, you'll almost always hear the same thing from millennial or Gen Z weebs. There were a bunch of anime that one had to watch through as something as a rite of passage, from branching out from your standard shonen into something more out there. Maybe you watched a bit of slice of life, maybe you watched an isekai, you definitely watched an ungodly amount of hentai, that's for sure. But perhaps that wasn't enough for you. Perhaps you were tired of watching the main character use the power of friendship to beat the bad guy again and again. You wanted something more mature and came across the dark and edgy stuff that you thought was the deepest shit ever. Anime like Future Diary and Akame ga Kill were some of the rawest things you had ever seen, and Unravel became your personal anthem. And now, looking back at them, you realize they were pretty ass. And Deadman Wonderland was one of them. Deadman Wonderland was one of the more unique edgy anime from the 2010s that stood out for its setting and over-the-top graphic violence. It captivated a lot of teenagers at the time of its release, and I was one of them. The anime wasn't deep or tried to be. It was unapologetically itself and owned that shit. If you're too young to know what it is, which is honestly weird, Deadman Wonderland is an anime that released in 2011 and followed our main character, Ganta Igarashi, who gets framed for the murder of his entire class and is sentenced to life at the titular Deadman Wonderland, a supermax prison that doubles as an amusement park where the normal people can go and watch inmates engage in death games under the belief that this is all practical effects. Ganta, finding himself in prison, has only one goal, which is to find the Red Man, the person who killed his entire class, and get revenge, all the while surviving prison life. But he's not alone, as he's accompanied by Shiro, his manic pixie dream girl who has apparently spent her whole life in the prison. What's her deal? Well, she's actually the Red Man Ganta is after, but he, and I guess she too, doesn't know that yet. The most fascinating part about Deadman Wonderland is the setting itself. The high-tech prison our 14-year-old is forced to survive in presents the potential for so many cool and deadly situations. Every prisoner is fitted with a collar that will inject poison and instantly kill them in 3 days if they don't take an antidote, referred to as candy. And the only way they can get this is through working to earn prison currency called cast points, which you can use to then buy candy as well as other things. There's a well thought out system in there. Too bad the story of Deadman Wonderland doesn't really do anything with them and pretty much brushes them aside by like the 4th episode. The best way I can describe the plot of the anime is a series of distracting coincidences and conveniences. It goes like this. After the Red Man murders his entire class and is put on trial for it, where he gets framed for the whole thing, it turns out that his lawyer was actually the man running the prison, and this was all an elaborate scheme to get Ganta into prison. And then he tries to kill him on several occasions. When you really think about this, it kind of makes no sense. Like, why go through all the trouble of framing this kid and sending him to jail just to try and kill him on the first day? You could argue that he was trying to get Ganta to awaken his blood powers, but he didn't even know Ganta had that kind of power until the 3rd episode. When he finally awakens his branch of Sin, badass name by the way, he also finds out that the Red Man is hidden in the mysterious G Block, a place secret to even the prison warden. And thanks to Shiro, who coincidentally knows the way there, he ends up at the place he was coincidentally going to be putting anyway. The first 3 episodes try to introduce us to the prison life and the rules, as well as the gruesome games the prisoners have to play, but after that, it takes a backseat, throwing away a super cool concept to opt into a battle shonen for the next few episodes. The introduction of branches of Sin is something I love and hate. On one hand, I love blood manipulation powers, and Deadman Wonderland is able to give all the dead men unique ways their blood powers work, but on the other hand, it takes too much focus from everything else. From the moment we learn about what a branch of Sin is to the final episode, we don't see them stop talking about it. Instead of giving us a gritty survival where our weak main character has to grow and fend for himself using any means necessary in a world he's been thrown into, we get the typical shonen. The next few episodes are just battles. And that's it. Nothing all that interesting comes from it, not even character development for Ganta, which I'll get into more of later. And then from the battles we move into Ganta joining a prison rebellion and trying to help them escape, completely forgetting about his search for the Red Man, the whole reason he wanted to get into G Block in the first place. The rest of the anime is just filled with gratuitous violence and over-the-top gore, which honestly fits in pretty well with the anime. But coupled with the many character deaths you'll see coming a mile away, it ends up making things feel unnecessary. Speaking of character deaths, the anime waves the brightest death flags I have ever seen. Right from the first episode, the dialogue Ganta has with his close friends is just some of the most obvious things ever. They talk about being friends forever and making good memories, and we're given the impression that they are really close, even sharing keychains. And the anime really tries its hardest to make you care for them through Ganta. He cries over them on several occasions and has flashback slideshows of them to use as a reminder for his motivations for seeking revenge, but it never quite does the job it's supposed to do and just comes off as being shoehorned in and annoying. It gets even worse in the second half when Ganta joins the rebel team, where they see themselves as family and talk about all the things they are going to do when they break out of prison and finally end things, only for them to get murdered in the next episode. It really shafts the entire cast, giving unnecessary screen time to people that genuinely didn't need it and putting the more important characters to the side. It hops from one shiny new plotline to the other, speedrunning the story and cramming a lot for just 12 episodes, which results in it feeling very unfinished and lacking. It sort of just gives up trying to build the previous plot points and switches to the typical battle shonen with a lot more guts spewing everywhere, which is a shame. And the characters don't help at all. As you would expect from an anime trying to cram a lot for 12 episodes, there isn't much in terms of character development. The only side character I can say that manages to develop is this girl, who goes from crazy yandere who gets off from murdering people to becoming more tame and developing feelings for Ganta. She doesn't show up after her story is done with, which is just more wasted screen time. Even the main character duo of Ganta and Shiro virtually remain the same till the end of the anime. Shiro, for most of the anime, is pretty mysterious. The whole deal surrounding what she is and why she's in the prison are a driving force that piques your interest. It gets even more interesting when it's revealed that she's actually the Red Man, or rather, her other personality is the Red Man. However, nothing comes from the reveal that happens in a self-contained scene, and it doesn't affect the grander story for the rest of the anime. I get that this is built up for the eventual gut-wrenching clash between the two that would happen later in the manga, but mind you, this isn't an end of season reveal that tries to tease things for the next season. No, it happens in the middle of the season and is never brought up again. We never even get to see the reason for her attacking Ganta's class. It kind of devalues Shiro as a character and takes a lot out of the mystery around her. Then again, most of her character revolves around Ganta. Speaking of Ganta, he's a crybaby. Now I love crybabies in anime, I did a whole video about it ages ago, so I have no problem with Ganta being a crybaby. He's a 14-year-old that has lived a fairly normal life up until he was thrown into what could be best described as hell for him, so it's only natural for him to cry after getting pummeled over and over. But the real annoying thing about him in the anime is that he doesn't really develop all that much in the span of 12 episodes. In the first few episodes, he gets his ass beat, cries about it, and then gets back up only to cry about the same thing again in a later episode. While this feels normal for a kid, it gets kind of annoying because he seemingly doesn't want to learn his lesson. It's only towards the end of the anime that he gets a half-episode training arc, gets stronger, proves his resolve, but after all that, it doesn't feel like he's gone anywhere as a character. It also doesn't help that the anime has seemingly all the characters revolve around him. Everyone wants something to do with Ganta, despite the fact that there really isn't anything that makes him all that special. I guess cause they're under the impression that he did murder his entire class. Everyone sort of just exists to hype Ganta up. This is especially apparent in the latter half where he joins the prison rebel group. They all think he's a big shot that will be a great addition to their team and help their cause since he's won 2 shonen battles in a row, and when they carry out their plan to break out to expose the prison, he's given the data chip to hold as their final hope. Like, what makes you think this fidgety kid will rise to the occasion? And when the bad guys finally catch up and murder most of the rebels, they just so happen to conveniently leave Ganta when it would cost nothing to kill him right there. This last minute save is something that happens all the time. My disbelief can only be suspended for so long. It feels like a lot of the problems plaguing the anime stems from the fact that it's an incomplete adaptation, as when the anime was being adapted, the manga was just about to enter its final arc. I can't help but wonder if the studio behind it, Studio Manglobe, which is now defunct, felt like the anime wouldn't do too well and so changed a few things with the adaptation, such as taking out a recurring and pretty important character who befriends Ganta and shows him the ropes during his first few days in prison and gives all her roles to this guy who I swear gets injured in one way or the other as some kind of running gag. It also gives the anime an original ending in an attempt to make a sort of definitive ending that vaguely teases a second season. Unfortunately, that'll never happen, with a remake being unlikely because the studio doesn't exist anymore, which means the rights are pretty iffy. But for what it's worth, Deadman Wonderland still stands out as one of the better edgy anime out there for its time, with a production quality to back it up, so it's still worth a rewatch if you take it as it is. Let me know what are your thoughts about Deadman Wonderland in the comments below. Maybe leave a like and subscribe, it helps a lot. This has been your very favorite slice of bread. Stay toasty.